Alright, hello, I am Moka, and this is my pre-VNConf talk, Realistic Ambitions and Releases, or how to actually keep your game in scope. My quick obligatory claim to fame slide is, hello, I am Moka, I'm a recent game dev major graduate, I am the co-founder and co-director of Team Seta City, and I am the main writer and programmer on all of the projects there at the moment. You can find me at Moka Devs on most websites. This past year, I released 3 games publicly, all to a lot of acclaim. To boast a little bit, all of them have received thousands and thousands of plays and downloads. So I like to think I'm doing something right. So basically, when you are scoping a project, the main thing you are going to want to keep in mind is to organize it well. So I find that there are 4 steps, 2 of which happen before the project is started, 1 which happens during, and finishing, which is like kind of happens during, kind of happens after. So first off is evaluating. What can I do? And I mean this in the most literal sense. What are you physically capable of doing? That is a question that maybe you think you know the answer to, maybe you don't. I'm not talking about like, can I write, can I program, whatever. This isn't a talk for that sort of thing. I am asking you to look at yourself and ask, what am I physically capable of dedicating to this specific project? Within what time frame am I making this game? How much time can I dedicate to it? And how long does it take me to do X thing? X can be like, write 1,000 words, program a button, draw a sprite, sketch out a CG, etc., etc., etc. An evaluation, for example, could look something like, hey, this game jam that I want to enter in perhaps Spooktober is a month long, and I can work on weekends as well as 1 or 2 days during the week, and I can work 2 or 4 hours depending on the day. Remember to underestimate rather than overestimate. That is like a big prevailing theme of this talk. But I have never made a game before, but how do I know what I am capable of? Well, you probably don't know what you're capable of, to be frank. It is impossible to know exactly what you're capable of until you do it, but you can make estimates, because even if you've never made a game, if you're an artist, you've certainly drawn something before. If you're a writer, you've written something before. If you're a programmer, you've probably written Hello World before, you know? So you can use these real-life comparables to apply towards your game and get like a rough estimate of what you think you can do. I also recommend looking at what other teams of similar size and experience backgrounds have made in the past. Number 2, planning. So prepare to kill your darlings. So now you know like what you can do, so you're going approximately how much time you can dedicate to this. So within that time frame, you can look at your game, you come up with your idea, and you're like, okay, so now this game needs to have content. Here's some of what your content may be. You don't need to read all of this, I mean, unless you're making your scope right now, your scope plan right now. But my point is that there's a lot of things that you want to make. You should always plan your game. You should never, ever wing it. If something is a major feature to your game, never assume you'll figure it out when you get there. You won't. Try and figure out as much about a game as you can before you start on it. The reason that 90% of games fall out of scope is due to planning issues. The reason any game crunches is because it did not plan well. Crunch is always a result of poor planning. Either the game size was too unrealistic for the time frame, or things were proportioned out badly and timed poorly. Basically, be responsible and be realistic. I do not crunch. Never ever crunch. Never ever crunch if you can help it. Never plan for crunch. That's bad. Everyone is like, oh, sometimes crunch is needed to make like something that I really want to make. Well, you don't need to make it. If a game that you're making for a month-long game jam requires crunch, you shouldn't be making that game. That's a bad game idea. You should also never ever plan for a best case scenario, because your ideal case scenario plainly is not going to happen, especially if this is your first or one of your first games. Either there could be an emergency, a team member drops out or ghosts, things are just taking longer than expected. When you make a project with as many moving parts as a game, if you plan a tight schedule that you'll barely be able to make it, you just won't. Instead, you should plan flexibly. You want to make a literal plan. You should make a list of need-to-haves, want-to-haves, and nice-to-haves. So here are my personal planning tips. So 1, you should plan for your game's minimal viable product. That basically means your need-to-haves. Need-to-haves, nice-to-haves, want-to-haves, basically means like, all right, my game needs to have a sprite of the main character. I would like them to have multiple expressions. It would be nice to have some of the minor characters have sprites as well. Basically just go through like your entire project and figure out assets like that. You should also write down your core game. I don't care if you're a solo developer who can just keep it all in their brain, write it down on like a physical piece of paper and keep that paper with you at all times. Having a physical piece of firm and simple deliverables of the core baseline of what your game is gives you something to go back to, and it helps you to stop ballooning from out of scope. Again, this should not be too long. This should be the core of your game. It should be part of those need-to-haves. You should also be afraid of scope creep. I find that this is most dangerous for game projects without a deadline. Usually if you are, if you're like in a game jam, scope creep doesn't tend to happen. You tend to like scope badly at the start and then like need to cut down. But like if you're like, ooh, I want to make a game and it'll take however long it takes. I just want it to be epic. Ooh, and I like came up with this cool feature to add. Ooh. If you're not careful, that 1 month project can turn into 1, 2, 3 years and then inevitably never get done. I have done this. Most game developers have, and it's okay that it has. But you should remember that a finished game is better than no game at all. A good way to fact check when you're like coming up with a list of features to see if like, hey, is this feature that I want to add a-okay, is to go to someone outside of your team, preferably someone who has like, maybe they don't know how to make games, but like they know what a game is. Don't go to your grandma unless she is a gamer. Maybe she is a gamer, but someone who has like a good idea of like what's going on, so you can try and justify a feature to them. You should ask yourselves the question: does it add significant value to the game? How much work will it cost? Is it worth prioritizing over other stuff? Do I really need to give all of the characters like a unique text box UI when that's going to be a pain to program? Do I really need to add like, do I really want like cinematic cameras? It would be so nice and cool to have, but like, can I do it within the time frame realistically? So sometimes even things on your need-to-haves list can be extraneous features, but figuring out what those are is just something you learn with practice. All right, so that's all stuff that happens before you even start your game. But now you've started your game, maybe you're like a week or 2 or whatever in, and things are not going perfectly. So it's time to adjust. So it's time to actually kill your darlings. So you're probably halfway through your time frame, you have a good idea of what you've done thus far, and things are not going the best. If you are on a team, do not play the blame game and don't expect too much of others. So basically what I mean by this is like, things are going to happen. People who said like, oh yes, I'm going to write so many words, don't worry, I can write this entire route on my own. And then like you check back with them and they're like, I have written 150 words. Sorry, but like I'm going to like get stuff done this week, don't worry. Say this with like love and care in your heart, but if someone is not pulling their weight, again, do not play the blame game, because especially like with game development, it's so easy to like overestimate how much you're like to truly intend to do something and then overestimate how long it takes, because game development is really, really, really hard. Be okay with just like being like, okay, I'm going to like maybe move you, like you can still work on this project, but I'm going to move you to like a non-vital part of this. I'm going to give this task to like either myself or someone else who has actually been going on deliverables, so that like it actually gets done. If you're not sure about like what it is you need to cut, look back at your list of need-to-haves, want-to-haves, nice-to-haves, and perhaps reevaluate them. see like, okay, I did want to give every major character a sprite, but I'm not going to do that. I really wanted to have the CG in, but like I do not, technically I could ship without it. I really wanted to have custom audio, but like maybe we can do with stock instead, or perhaps no audio. If I really, really needed to, I would prefer not to, but if I really, really need to. Sometimes you need to make hard decisions like that. So this may be the point where you actually realize how out of scope your project is and might need to make major changes to the game's ending, its routes, amount of content, etc. in order to finish it nicely. So for Bury the Hatchet, for example, Bury the Hatchet has 3 main endings. It has a ton of bad ends, but it has 3 main endings, and we were planning on having a 4th main ending. But as we were working on it, I was like, hey, writing this, I don't really see the point of writing this with like how much work it would take and how little it would actually add to the game, and so we just didn't add it, and most people are none the wiser. I don't think anyone has been like, feels like there should be another ending to Bury the Hatchet. As you're working, you might realize like, hey, I haven't actually got a lot done at all, in which case, I've been there, I've done that. Anyone who has been making enough games feels the same. Like maybe like for the first day or two when the game jam started, you were like, yeah, I'm raring to go. But now that you're 2 weeks in, you're like, we only have some placeholders done and we're a little bit screwed. So rescoping and replanning happens. Unless it's like a super tiny 24, 48 hour game jam, you can basically still make a game from scratch at this point. So you should go back to the planning slides, follow the same steps from before, need to, want to, nice to, but with your newfound experience under your belt. So maybe in your initial evaluation, you were like, oh, yeah, I can work 4 hours a day. And you're like, no, when I come back home from work or school, I'm so tired and I cannot do that many hours a day. I can do 2 hours like every other day. Plan realistically. Do not assume that once the deadline starts looming, you'll be like, oh, I'll be strong and I'll finish it all in the last swing. You won't. Or if you do, it'll be bad. That is a recipe for crunch. And crunch is bad. We don't want crunch. But remember, a finished game is always better than a non-finished one. While it is perfectly fine to turn your project into a demo, I highly recommend making a finished project instead, as you'll find motivation will drop off sharply once your deadline passes. That being said, once you release a game, you're probably going to like find bugs and stuff that you didn't initially notice, or maybe like you want to add like a definitive edition. That's different. A definitive edition is different. Releasing like a base version of a definitive edition is different than releasing like a demo. So just keep that in mind. All right, section 4, sticking the landing. So it's the last days. So your final time frame. This is going to be whenever you feel the pressure of the deadline actually looming on your back. If you've been epic with scoping, you might have a chill and satisfying final push time frame where you're not actually pushing at all. You're just like polishing and leaving final touches, doing some playtesting, and everything's going smoothly. It could happen. It has happened to me. Magnetism Rally went like so wonderfully and awesome. But unfortunately, it is probably not the case. So expect some rushed days at the end, but you should not, again, do not plan to be like, yes, final days, everything will be epic then, so I don't even need to worry about the rest of it. I'll just like I'll pull like 3 all-nighters in a row and it'll be awesome. Don't do that. Assuming that the pressure of a close deadline will give you the ability to finish things will make for bad long-term practices, and when you're crunching, things are just going to be worse. You're going to make more mistakes, your art is gonna be worse or whatever, your writing you're gonna have typos or whatever. You're just gonna be less proud of it, but you're just going to feel pressured to get it done rather than like finishing something you're proud of. So nip this in the bud as much as you can. When you're trying to decide on things to like cut in those final days, don't skip out on playtesting. Like maybe if it's a 48-hour game jam and it's like not that polished of a project, okay, but like playtesting is so important. I recommend always leaving like a day or 2 before the end to like give it to like an outsider to play the game and find bugs. It's vital. All right, and now you've made your game, you've released it, it's done. Yippee! So you want to give it a few days so you can breathe, rest, and look back on it with fresh eyes, but then it is time for reflection. You should make sure to emphasize good as much as you emphasize bad. It is easy to forget good habits among the bad ones. Try and think to yourself, is there one thing that you wish you could have done sooner? And if there is, what is it? Try and pick only one thing. Like maybe there's certainly going to be so many things that you can improve on. I say this with love in my heart. This isn't like a personal, like, oh, I think you're bad. It's whenever I finish a project, I'm like, there's so many things I wish I could have changed or done differently. With the newfound experience that comes with finishing a project. But try and pick one actionable thing so you don't get overwhelmed. Also, do not place blame on individual members because that is counterproductive, and it's going to make for like bad relationships in the long term. Instead, figure out what circumstances could be changed to like fix things. So the biggest one is usually some form of communication or structural thing that needs to be fixed. I've had problems where people just like didn't realize that like, oh, this file was done, and we both did it twice, or this is where files should have been saved or whatever. Usually it's file sharing, I find. But yeah, keep that in mind. All right, and that's my talk. Thank you so much for listening. I am shy, but please do talk to me anyway and ask me questions. You can shoot me a DM on Twitter at MokaDevs, or I am in the Discord server as Moka Sips on the VN Dev one. I typically accept friend requests, but I do have DMs open for all servers, so just shoot me a DM. In addition, I also I talked about my own experiences, but I also referenced a bunch of articles and videos about other people's scope opinions, so check them out here. Also, a shout out to Seta City for being so great to work with, and also my dear friend Mini Starfruit for looking over this presentation for me before I gave this talk. Alright, have a wonderful day, and thank you for listening to me. Bye bye!